Hello there, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch and to my garden where I'm going to share with you all the vegetables that I plant to last our family for an entire year. We still buy things like lettuce at the grocery store during the winter time. Sometimes broccoli and cauliflower if we're wanting some fresh broccoli and cauliflower, tomatoes, things like that when we're wanting fresh fruit and vegetables throughout the winter, or sort of fresh because they do get imported up here in the north. But for the most part, we grow a large amount of the vegetables we eat right here in this garden that I'm about to show you. I have been planting like a crazy woman over the last couple of days because even though our last frost date is not officially until the 2nd of June, I have been keeping a very close eye on the weather forecast, and it's looking absolutely fantastic for the next week. Temperatures over 7 degrees Celsius at night for the most part, so I'm feeling fairly confident to get the majority of my plants planted out here in the garden. So I'm going to show you what we've already planted, and then we are going to get to planting some beets, some carrots, turnips, rutabagas, and a few other things. Where I'm at right now is planting out most of the seedlings. You can see some of the other seedlings I haven't yet planted behind me here out into the garden because they are in desperate need of just getting into the ground and out of their little containers that they've been in, some of them since back in February, like the onions. But I do want to get some seeds into the ground, especially the carrots. I did plant some early beets a couple of weeks ago, but I do want to get the brunt of my beets that will be going down into my root cellar planted today. What else are we going to plant? Maybe some flowers. But first, let me just show you what we already have planted. Back behind me here, you can see I have planted a ton of onions. We have about 486, give or take, onions planted here. I am going to be planting the rest of my onions. I have another 500 or so starts that I need to put into the garden, but I don't have room in my main garden here that I'll be planting up in my crop garden, which is up there behind the trampoline. I have big plans for that garden this year. I wasn't planning on putting a lot of vegetables in there, mostly flowers, but I have run out of space this year in the main garden, so I am going to be using a few of the rows up there for some bulk vegetables like some potatoes and some onions and probably some squash up there as well. I wasn't planning on putting some potatoes up there because I did have scab in my soil last year and I ended up with some of my potatoes, not all of them, but some of them had developed scab, and scab stays in the soil for a long time. But I just decided, I was talking to my mom about it, and I just decided that the potatoes that I would plant up there, I would just peel those and can them or freeze dry them. So I have put a couple rows of potatoes up there. The rest of the potatoes I planted back in this garden. I gotta get out of the way so you can see this garden back here. And I had squash planted here last year, which I absolutely loved. It looked so beautiful with the big squash plants, and I had a red chair sitting there, and I absolutely loved the way that it looked. But I didn't have anywhere else to put potatoes this year. One of the other spots that I have planted potatoes in the past is where you can see all of that weed barrier over there, which is a great spot, but it is absolutely infested with grass. So I have decided to keep that spot covered this year and then planting it again next year. So this area has been all planted out with about 5 different varieties of potatoes. I way overplanted last year with my potatoes, so we have way more potatoes than we actually needed, which means I can plant fewer potatoes this year because I'm going to be able to process. We're going to head down to the root cellar and I'll show you what I still have in there. A lot of the potatoes that I have left in the root cellar, I'm going to be able to freeze dry and can those potatoes. So I'm not going to need as many this year, which is why this patch here, this is a very small patch compared to what I normally plant. And then I'll take you up to the crop garden and show you the 2 big rows that we have planted up there. But that will definitely do us, including the potatoes that I have left over from last year, for a full 12 months. Along with the 1,000 onions that I'm going to be planting, that will also do us for a year. With my onions, I do keep some of them in my cold room, but the majority of them I actually chop and freeze dry. And then I have enough onions to last us throughout the entire year. One of the questions you might be asking yourself is how I determine what or how much I need to plant in order to get us through a year. And I'll be honest, my friends, this is mostly a trial and error thing. Over the years of gardening, I have just refined how much I know that we need to last us for a year. So for instance, I know 1,000 onions is going to do us for a year. We actually use onions a lot, just about every day. In order to determine what your family is going to eat, the best advice I can give you is to keep track for at least a couple months of what you're buying from the grocery store. So how many cans of jarred tomatoes, how many bags of carrots, how many onions are your family using? And that will give you a really good benchmark of how many you need to plant to last for however long it is that you're wanting that food to last. And then one of the most important things to learn once you've figured out how much food to grow is how to preserve that food. And that is where I hopefully can come in and be helpful to teach you how to preserve all of these different things that you're going to be growing. On the subject of learning how to garden and all things gardening, I am hosting a live Zoom call tomorrow evening, the 24th of May at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And to register for that call, it's absolutely free. All you have to do is click the link below and you can sign up for it, and you'll get the Zoom link tomorrow evening to join us for that call. Everybody is welcome. Doesn't matter if you don't have any experience whatsoever. Doesn't matter if you don't have any questions either and you just want to sit and learn. Bring yourself a notebook, a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, whatever you like, and join us for that call. I'm really excited about it. These calls are always really enjoyable. You can see some things planted over here, so let's go check that out. We have some lettuce planted here, some beautiful celery planted over here. My celery is just looking wonderful. We have some baby pak choy and gorgeous fennel. Fennel is just one of my favorite things to grow. Last year was the first year that I grew fennel, and I absolutely love it. It is just such a beautiful plant. And over here we have all kinds of brassicas planted. So we have broccoli, cauliflower planted over here, and you can see that these are all covered in row covers. And the reason for that, we have cabbage moths here, and cabbage moths will come the minute you plant your cabbages out in your garden if you have an issue with cabbage moths, and they will lay eggs even on your tiny little plants. So as soon as you get those into the ground, I recommend covering them right away. I can link these covers here. They're just inexpensive covers off of Amazon, and they come with everything that you need to make these little row covers. These have kind of drooped down because I watered these all night with a sprinkler. So once the sun dries them off, they'll pop back up again. But this I definitely recommend if you want to try to grow brassicas. And on the note of that, I didn't follow my own rule. Planted a few down here that I have not covered yet. Last night, there's a few here. We have some Chinese cabbages, some Copenhagen market cabbages. These ones are looking pretty sad. I've got to get the sprinkler over here on these. But I have some more beds down here that I need to get weeded before I plant them out. So I don't want to water this until I get those weeds out. That'll happen a little bit later today. And I also have to go through and straighten out all my weed barrier from last year that's kind of blown up and get it all nice and flat so it looks nice. And then probably plant some flowers along the bottom again like I did last year. These are all the onions that I have yet to plant here. So as you can see, lots and lots of onions left to plant. I will just give you a quick demonstration on how I plant these and how I grow my onions. These are a little bit thirsty. These ones need some water, but I planted these back on, I want to say February 16th, give or take. And I usually plant between 20 and 30 seeds per large container like this. And you want a fairly deep container for the roots to be able to grow, especially because they have to stay in these containers for so long. It's a good idea to start your onions as early as possible so you can get a nice good head start like you can see here. So what I do is I actually just pull this right off. You can see all those beautiful roots there. And then I just loosen, I usually pull it apart like this. And then I can just pull these seedlings right out. They tease apart very easily. You can see the little onion on the bottom. And then I dig a hole in the ground, the depth of these onions, hang the seeds kind of, or the roots kind of down in the hole, and then cover them up. I try not to cover this bulb up too much. You can cover it up a little bit, but I don't bury it, up to there, just about up to there, and then water them in really well. And they will flop over, look a little sad as you can see here, but once they have a good soak and they've been in the ground for a few days, they will perk back up and stand up straight like this. So super duper easy to grow. I am going to pop these back in here again and give them a little soak because I'm not going to get to planting these for a few more days until that fence is up over in the crop garden. The row that you can see there that's all nice and tall and beautiful looking, those are actually garlic. So I planted my garlic last October, at the end of last October, and they won't be picked probably until into July. Once I have about 3 or 4 leaves that have completely died back and turned crispy brown, then I'll be pulling those out, but I'll definitely bring you along with me for that. This Sprout Box garden bed here, this is a company from here in British Columbia. And anyway, this bed was totally infested with mint a couple of, almost a month ago now. Well, last year, it just got completely infested. I made the mistake of planting some mint in my garden probably 7 years ago. And of course it spread because that's what mint does. Definitely recommend planting mint in containers or in a space that you don't mind having it take over. Needless to say, it took over this bed. I ended up removing all the soil from this bed, lifted it up, moved it, laid a couple layers of weed barrier down underneath it, and then refilled it with clean soil. And what I decided to do you remember all of the Dahlia bulbs that I bought from Costco 6 weeks ago or something like that now? I've lost track of time. It's a very busy time of year. I started all of these. Let me show you what I started them in. This is how I started them. So in a container, having some form of drainage in the bottom is a good idea. I don't, and they grew fine. Not these ones, but the other ones did. And so I grew them in here. I started them, I'm gonna have to check back and put it on the screen, but somewhere like 4 or 6 weeks ago or something like that. And they have grown beautifully, and I decided to plant them in this bed. And then along the back, I have gladiolas. So there's going to be the tall gladiolas in the back with all of the beautiful dahlias in the front. Originally, what I was planning on doing was planting the majority of my flowers up in the crop garden and creating a cut flower garden. I still plan on doing that on a couple of the rows up there, but since I ran out of space for my vegetables down here, I needed to take some of the beds up there to plant vegetables in, which is fine. But I was just deciding what I wanted to do here, and I talked about doing petunias, filling this whole bed with petunias. But when I was walking by here the other day and I imagined it full of beautiful dahlias with the tall glads in the background, I just thought that would look absolutely beautiful. So that's what I did. Here, oh, I did just shove some parsley that I had that was looking really sad back in the corner of the bed. I'm probably going to move that out and put that into a green stalk, but I just needed somewhere to put it, so I shoved it back there. But we have all the beautiful gladiolas, and these are all a variety of different colors and kinds. Dahlias in the front here. I still have a few things that I need to get planted in the garden. I have some cosmos here that I've started that I need to plant, some lisianthus. I think that's what that is over there. I also have some petunias that I bought from a local nursery. Some beautiful zinnia here. Some more zinnia over here. Some seedlings that I bought from our local nursery. So I have all kinds of herbs that I'm going to be putting into my green stalk. These gorgeous purple pansies. I have some wave petunias, some more wave petunias. And these guys here, these are a little tiny, dainty, beautiful marigold. And they did get touched by a little bit of frost. You can see that purpling color there. These ones actually got killed off a little bit, or these leaves, but lots of life down in the bottom. So I'll just trim those off. We got to get those planted. Gorgeous little marigolds here. Oh, I missed a few celery. The anemones, so these were also ones that I bought from Costco. Those Costco bulbs, friends, they just did amazing. So I'm not sure where I'm going to put these yet, but I'm really excited about them. We have our beautiful kale here, some dill, some purple acre cabbages that need to get planted. So even sitting out like this, get hardening off, which is what these are doing, I should have these covered. So what I'm going to do before I actually plant them out underneath our row covers is I'll check the leaves and make sure that we don't have any eggs laid on them. I have some corn. I didn't plant very many corn. I think only about 75 or so. This is just for fresh eating. We won't be preserving this. I've only been really successful growing corn once because it stays cold for so long, and corn really likes heat. But this is a short season variety of corn that I thought I would try. I didn't want to plant a ton of it to see if it was going to work. before I plant probably next year. If it does go well, then I'll plant a big patch of it. I'm not going to be putting my squash out. So there's a whole bunch of different varieties of squash, and I have 4 trays of squash. I won't be putting these out actually into the garden until probably the 5th or 6th of June. So these go into the greenhouse at night. So even though I'm moving these inside at night, I do keep them out during the day, because that way I don't need to harden off squash. I find squash is one of the harder ones to harden off because the leaves are so sensitive. But if I'm growing them outside under the natural sunlight during the day, bringing them inside to be protected at night, then I don't have to worry about that, which saves me a lot of time and effort. And then I have a few other trays of things that I need to put into the garden, but for the most part, we're planting seeds. I am so excited because my green stalks showed up yesterday. If you've been following the saga of my green stalks, I ordered them. They got stuck at the border, then they got lost. We found them. We finally got them here yesterday, and I'm so excited about it because I have so many beautiful plants to plant out in my green stalk planters. You can see one, I have strawberries in here, and then I have another one down in my high tunnel. We're going to head down there in just a second. Last year was the first year that I planted in green stalks, and I just love them. I think they look so beautiful when they're all full of plants. And I love the fact that you can grow so much food or flowers in a small space. So even if you live in an apartment or you just have a small patio, you can fit a lot of food in one of these. I'm planning on planting 1 out with herbs and 2 with flowers, I think. I haven't quite decided yet. On the note of the green stalk, let's head into the high tunnel and I'll show you the one that I have planted out there. My bees have just woken up. It's quite early in the morning right now. It's around 7:30 in the morning. And the bees don't start flying until it starts warming up. But you can see they're starting to come out there. So happy about having my bees doing so well. I did have a little bit of an incident happen in my high tunnel. The second night, so I planted my high tunnel out, the second night after I planted it, it got down to 1 degree here. And so that's obviously very cold. So while my tomato plants were protected from actually getting hit by frost, the cold itself caused a little bit of damage to some of the plants, some more than others. And I've never seen damage like this happen before. They either get frost and they just die. Their leaves just kind of turn that dark green once the sun hits them, and they just limp out and they just die. That was not what happened in this case. Let me show you. So you can see some of them look fantastic. These ones all looked good. They were right by my heater, so that makes sense. And then I had some that ended up with damage around the outside of the leaf, some little spots like that. And yeah, it was very strange. Here's an even better example of what I'm talking about that I've never seen this before, but I know for sure it was from the cold because it happened the day after we hit that 1 degree. And now that it's been nice and warm, all the new leaves that are coming in are looking totally normal. This one got hit pretty bad. You can see that the leaves actually died. And the ones that were along the side, they got hit the worst. Look at that. But the good news is, because they didn't have all of their leaves damaged by that cold weather, there's enough photosynthesizing happening that the plant is going to be just fine, sending out all kinds of new leaves here. So it may have stunted the growth of the plants a little bit, at least the ones that got hit by that cold weather, but it didn't kill them outright, which is fantastic. Here is the green stalk that I planted. I planted this about 4 weeks ago and then just left it in my little greenhouse. And look at these beautiful marigolds, sweet alyssums, smelling beautiful. We have little tomatoes. These are dwarf, or these are actually micro dwarf tomatoes. Actually, I have a little tomato growing on that one. Some more beautiful marigolds just about to bloom down here. So look at all of this beautiful, both flowers and food that we're able to grow vertically like this. I just love it. I did plant 2 of these. These are actually mineral tubs for cattle that I use for planting flowers in. So I've got this one planted out, and this pretty one over here planted, looking lovely. I still have a bunch of basil that I need to plant. I'm going to plant this basil right up over here. I have a couple of these that I need to plant out. My very sad okra. Okra does not like the cold, my friends, at all. it limps right out if it even gets cold, like 5 degrees Celsius. It does not like, but it's still trucking along. So hopefully now that we're having this temperature shift, these will be able to grow. Peppers looking fantastic. So I keep my peppers covered with this light frost blanket here. It's like a floating row cover at night, and they are doing well. They were not impacted by the cold at all, which is fantastic. So this is the kind of heater, I can actually turn that off, that I use in here just to help keep the temperature above really cold when it gets really cold at night. Overall, really happy with the high tunnel and how it's coming along. I will be planting some melons in these. I just have to put the holes in. I planted melons here last year, and I actually had an amazing melon crop. So I'll be planting some over there and some over on this side as well. But I will wait to put those in the ground until into June. They can stay in the greenhouse until then. Not much work left to do in here, which is great. Okay, now let's go and get some stuff planted, shall we? I am going to be planting out my green stalks in the next couple of days, and I'll bring you along with me for that because it's so fun. Oh, and I should mention, I do have a code. My code is stackable on top of most of the sales that Greenstock has. So if Greenstock's having a sale right now, you can use my code. I'll put that down in the show notes and the pinned comment for you. And I loved the way it looked. This is the main entrance right here to my garden. So the house is up there, and then I walk through the forest garden here. That's a perennial garden for those of you who are new here, that has lots of fruit trees and berry bushes and things like that. And then I come through here and walk down right here, and I had carrots growing there, and I loved the way that it looked. So I decided to plant carrots along the end of this so that I can kind of have the same effect. When I am planting my garden, it's as much about functionality and food production as it is about beauty. So when I'm planting things, I'm really trying to imagine what it's going to look like when the plants are fully mature, and the aesthetic of it matters to me. It's one of the reasons why I plant flowers all over my garden as well. I actually have some sunflowers in trays over here. So I have sunflowers here. So this is a variety of sunflowers from Moonglow Gardens. And then I have some, what are these ones called again? These are Pro Cut White Light. So they're a really light buttery yellow color sunflower. I also have a bunch of sweet peas that are coming up. These ones are just starting to come up here. And these are some pickling cucumbers that I have that are going into the greenhouse at night. And we'll be planting these out along with the squash into June. The point of showing you those was to say that I love putting sunflowers all over my garden as well. Zinnia, sunflowers, cosmos, those are kind of my go-to ones that I have planted all over my garden. So a stirrup hoe is kind of my go-to hoe for weeding when the weeds are fairly small. And then after I've done that, I will rake it out. And then I take a stick like this and I put my lines in for planting. All right, so for the kinds of carrots we are doing tender sweet. We're doing St. Valerie, which is not one that I have planted before. Napoli, which is one of my kind of go-to ones. Also Yaya F1, that's one that I have grown before that I really love. But my go-to one for the majority of the carrots that I grow are Bolero F1 pelleted seeds. So I prefer pelleted seeds. Let me show you why. One of the things that I don't like about growing carrots is the fact that you have to thin them. And with pelleted seed like this, I don't have to. So you can see that they are coated. I'm not sure what the coating is. It's some kind of organic coating. And you can see exactly the size and be able to space them according to what you want to have them spaced. So I find even though these seeds are a little bit more expensive, I end up wasting way less because I don't have to thin So this whole bed is probably just going to be these guys. You have some, I do believe these ones are not pelleted, so let me show you the difference. Look at how tiny these little carrot seeds are. So that is why I switched to pelleted seeds a few years ago, and I absolutely love them. They didn't have the Napoli in pelleted, or I would have purchased these pelleted as well. So as far as spacing, one of the pieces of advice I always offer when it comes to planting your plants is to picture the size they're going to be when they're fully grown, and make sure that you space so that they have adequate space. So each vegetable is different. For root vegetables, I usually only leave about 1 inch of space between the root itself. I don't worry about the greens on the top. Whereas with cabbage, I like to leave them enough space so that the leaves of the full-grown cabbage are just barely touching the neighboring cabbage next to it. The reason that I do that with cabbage or with any brassicas, because I can end up with, especially with cabbages, a lot of moisture being trapped underneath there, and then things starting to rot at the base of the cabbage plant, or the leaves starting to rot. So in this case, we're going to space these around 2 inches apart or so. And what I'm going to do here is get all of these seeds put into this bed. Then we're going to cover it up. I just use a rake and just pull the soil and tamp it down a little bit, which I'll show you. And then I'm going to cover this with weed barrier, which might sound like kind of a weird thing, but carrots really need to have consistent moisture throughout the germination period until they're up about 1 inch or so, because they can dry out really quickly. And the initial little carrot plant is quite vulnerable to heat, to drying out. So putting the weed barrier on top helps to keep the moisture in the ground in between waterings. But also something that I found, and this was kind of an accidental find, is that there's still going to be a ton of weeds in this soil, and those weeds are going to germinate and pop up really quickly underneath the weed barrier. For whatever reason, and I don't know why this is, they are very susceptible to being burnt off by strong sunlight, whereas the little seedlings, the little carrot seedlings, when they start to germinate, are not quite as susceptible. So what I've been doing is covering them with weed barrier. As soon as the carrots start to germinate, I pull that weed barrier off, and I do it on a nice sunny day, and that sun burns off all of the weeds that come up. It's a little bit shocking when you first pull that barrier off, because it's going to look like you just basically have a weed patch, but then the sun comes along and burns those weeds off and they just die. So I've been doing that for the last couple of years, and it's been working really well. If you can stay really on top of watering your carrots and on top of the weeding, it's not necessary to do that, but I've just found that it's really worked nicely. I don't know where my rock rake went, so I'll just use this. So I just want to cover these up with just a little bit of soil. I am going to be putting my sprinkler on this section of the garden right now. Otherwise, if I wasn't going to, then I would hand water these in really well, so give the ground a really good soak, and then cover them with the weed barrier right away. Probably going to have this going on here for an hour before I cover it with the weed barrier. So once this has been watered in, I'll be pegging some weed barrier on here, and then in the next week, sometimes carrot seeds can take up to 21 days to germinate. They can take a really long time, but once they've germinated and I go through the process of pulling them off and killing the weeds off, I will make sure to show you guys that. So that will be in an upcoming video. Right now we're going to head over to another part of the garden and get some beets and some turnips and rutabagas planted. All right, so for beets, we're going to do early wonder beets. We're going to do Detroit dark red. I'm going to do Cylindra too, but I cannot find my Cylindra seeds right now. We're going to do Eleanor rutabagas, and then purple top white globe turnips. And we're going to do the same thing that we just did with our carrots, just about exactly. We did as well. So same thing, our stick and our lines. I'll show you what beet seeds look like. See those? So again, same thing with spacing. So I'm just picturing the full-size beet. Beets can actually be pretty much touching. You can even plant them in little clumps if you like, especially if you want early beets. These beets that I'm planting are actually for storage, so they can get as big as they want, and then they'll be going into my root cellar. So I'll be spacing them probably, I don't know, about that far apart. I love beets so much. I just think they're absolutely delicious, and I have a beet borscht recipe in the Little Mountain Ranch family cookbook that is so good. I like making huge vats of it and then freezing it. I have tried canning it, did not like the way that it turned out canned, so freezing it is a better option. It freezes beautifully. If you like beets, definitely recommend that recipe. I might even have it over on my blog, and if I do, I'll link that for you. Rutabagas and turnips are just about the same, but not quite. So this is what a turnip looks like. I find they tend to have a little bit more of a peppery flavor, similar to a radish, than the rutabagas do. They tend to be a little bit sweeter, and when they roast up, they caramelize a little bit better than a turnip. I'm not going to plant a ton of these. The kids always tease me, Mom, why do you plant these? Nobody likes them. I like throwing them into stew, like a beef stew in the winter. I think they are delicious that way, but most of my family doesn't like them, so I'm just going to plant the end of this bed with them. So you can see those little tiny seeds. The seeds are the same for both. You can see these little tiny seeds. The seeds are the same for both. They look very similar. So I'm going to go to the end, plant those ones up. I'm going to save my other 2 rows that are here for my cylindra beets. So cylindra beets are my favorite beet to grow because they're long and narrow. They peel really easy. They chop really easy for canning, and they just all around an easier beet to manage, and the flavor of them is really good. I mean, truth be told, all beets kind of taste the same in my opinion. I have grown yellow beets and white beets, and they all taste like a beet. I would say that the yellow and white beets tend to have a little bit, maybe less of an earthy flavor than a red beet does, but I love the color of red beets, so that's what I like to grow. Even though this soil is already damp, I will water these in. Recommend doing that when you plant, no matter how damp your soil is. That is going to be it for planting in the garden right now. I will probably do some more planting a little bit later on today, get some of these flowers put in. I am going to be planting beans, both pole beans and bush beans. Those will be planted in this weed barrier over here. I already have the holes in place for it, but those are both plants that are super sensitive to frost, and we have had frost as late as June 10th the last couple of years. So I'm going to wait and put those in the ground until probably around between the 1st and the 5th of June, where I'll actually plant my beans. And then of course my squash and my pickling cucumbers, which I already mentioned, won't go out into the garden until the beginning of June. One of the things that I like to think about when it comes to planning the amount of food that I'm going to grow is, like I talked about, the importance of knowing how to preserve. And if I can preserve things in a way that gives them a really long shelf life, like with my freeze dryer, for instance, I don't mind having extra. So I'm planting over 1,000 onions, which is probably going to be more than we need. But that little extra buffer will give me a buffer against maybe a failure of crops next year. Or like last year, I didn't plant quite enough onions, and if I had overplanted the year before, then I would have ended up with that extra buffer of those extra onions. So that's something that I really do try to do. Not always successful, but I do try. So let's head down to the pantry, to the root cellar. Then we'll go up through the pantry, and then we'll end up at the crop garden, and I'll just explain to you what I'm planning on doing up there. Whenever I show this root cellar, I get a lot of comments from people saying that they would be creeped out to go into it, which I understand. For me, it's a very nostalgic feeling. My grandparents had a root cellar in their basement, and it just had that root cellar smell. So every time I open this door and I smell that root cellar smell, it brings me back to my grandparents' home, and I have such fond memories of that. I actually painted this door the same color as my grandpa's overalls that he always wore in his garden. So let's go in and I'll show you where we're at. The root cellar has about a 15-foot kind of hallway that goes to the cellar itself. This part here actually does freeze in the wintertime. I hope you're able to see in here. There's not great light, but as you can see, these are all potatoes here, and there are lots of them left over. These are fingerling potatoes, and they look fantastic. They're not sprouting at all. I will leave my potatoes down here that are in good shape for as long as I can, because then I can just grab a bag and use them kind of fresh. But for anything that's starting to soften, I'll preserve those in, like I said, the freeze dryer, or I'll can them. We do have bags of carrots left here that are still looking good. Oh, there's starting to be a little bit of mold. You can see on the bottom of that one. So this will be something that I'll have to deal with right away. I still have beets left over that are still nice and firm, and they aren't sprouting yet. If I wanted to collect seed from my carrots, I would actually go out and plant this in the garden. Carrots are biennials, which means that they send up their flowers and they produce their seed on the second year. But I am such a pelleted carrot fan, pelleted carrot seed fan, that I'm not actually going to do that. I know how to do seed saving. Should I need to do it, I definitely could, but I do try to keep at least a 12 to 24 month supply of seeds on hand at any given time. So if I needed to collect seed, say I wasn't able to get seed for some reason, I would still be in a good position to do that because I have enough seed. I could seed and then pull those roots up, put them in my root cellar, and plant them the following year and have seed again. So that's the reason that I don't. There is some seed saving that I do every year, but for the most part, I purchase my seed. This is the most food I have ever had. I wonder if you guys can actually see. It's not great light in here, but I have all of these bins behind us filled with food, and then all of these bags that are here, pretty dark back there, I apologize for that, completely filled still with food. So we still have beets, and I didn't see any rutabagas though, so we have used all those, or turnips, but we have beets, carrots, and potatoes in here that are still looking absolutely fantastic. One of the things about this particular root cellar is I do need to open it up in July and have it open for July and August to just sort of air it out and dry it out a little bit and kill off any mold that might have grown in here over the previous year. This was something that the people that we bought this root cellar from, or not the root cellar, the ranch from, told us that we should do. So I have been doing that consistently. So by July 1st, I will have to have this emptied out no matter what. And all of this food processed and turned into some stuff for the pantry. All right, now we'll head up to the pantry. My pantry, like my root cellar, is fuller this time of year than it has ever been in the past. And the reason for that is similar to the amount of food that I grew for the root cellar last year being way more than we needed. I canned almost 600 jars, maybe 400, between 400 and 600 jars more than I have had in previous years. So I actually have so much left, which is a great feeling. It means that I'm not going to have to can quite as much this year, although I'm going to stay on top of canning lots anyway. Because like I said, I'm trying to buffer against things in the future that I can't see, like maybe a failed crop, or maybe for some reason we're not able to buy as many groceries from the grocery store as we normally can, or whatever. This just gives me food security and a buffer against those things that I can't predict happening. So I don't mind having so much surplus on these shelves this time of year. We used all of the tomato products that I canned last year. So this year, instead of putting so much emphasis on pickled products, which is primarily what you can see on this shelf here, I'm going to focus my energy much more on tomato products. I also have, there's so many pickled, like cowboy candy. We have lots and lots of pickled products in general. I have some canned soups left on the shelf as well. I also have lots of condiment type things. So things like red pepper jelly. We have citrus cantaloupe butter. We have orange mango jelly. Just lots of different condiment type things that are on the shelves. We even still have some peaches left, which has never happened in the history of all my years of canning. I don't know why we didn't eat as many peaches as we normally do. They're normally all gone by February, but we even still have some of those. I also have lots of salsa left on the shelf, so truly I can focus most of my attention on making some fancier fun things for the pantry this year. Meals in jars for sure I'm going to do a ton of, and then a ton of tomato products I will be canning. So very happy with this whole situation. Super fun project to show you here, but that's going to be for the next video. For today, we are going to stick to gardening. We're just heading up to the crop garden here. Garden here is my crop garden. As you can see, we've rimmed the whole entire thing with some more weed barrier. I've been using weed barrier more and more in my garden to try to combat, ooh, sorry, the wind's kicking up there, to try to combat the quackgrass issue that we have here on our farm. I kind of need to use it in cycles. There's areas that I need to keep covered for 12 months, then I can pull them off for the following year, and then I need to cover them again. But the edge of this garden was really bad. So it's been all cleaned out. These first 2 rows here are planted out with potatoes already. The next one over will be flowers. I think I'm going to do 3 rows of flowers, and then I'm going to do onions up at the top and probably some more carrots. The amount of carrots that I planted down there is probably, I'd say, about 1/3 of what I'm going to need to plant out altogether in order to keep us in the same position we're in right now, where we still have carrots left over this time of year. But I really want to put a ton of flowers in this garden. Like I said, I had hoped that I was going to be able to fill this whole garden with flowers this year, but I don't mind that I have to use some of it for food. All right, friends, that's it for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about gardening, remember to join us for our live Zoom gardening Q&A that's going to be happening tomorrow night, May 24th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you are somewhere where 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is 2 a.m. your time, and you still want to be able to hear the call, you can register for it, and we will be sending out a recording of it the day after. I hope you all enjoyed today's video, everyone, and I very much look forward to seeing you next time. Bye!